original's episode 16 titled Farewell to Storyville. This episode seemed like it was sort of the end of an era with the way it, concluded with Rebecca, basically leaving the city because, really Klaus let her leave. And ultimately he let her live throughout the, conflict of this episode. But it was a really, really well done episode, focusing on the originals themselves and them trying to deal with this sort of emotional struggle with Klaus trying to kill Rebecca for betraying him for something that happened you know decades ago, but of course it's fresh news to him. So they're going through and Klaus does his little trial, and that doesn't last too long, and it's just them all really amped up and trying to figure out how do I get what I want in this situation. And Klaus is trying to kill Rebecca, Rebecca's trying to live, and Elijah is trying to protect Rebecca and keep her alive, while once again trying to satiate Klaus in his almost infinite amounts of rage. But it was a really, really well done episode with them trying to just see how do we get past this, and how do we deal with all these crazy emotional problems. And one of the best things about it was the fact that each of them did end up with a moment where they were kind of brought to tears, or they were just really surprised. Klaus, when he stabbed Elijah, Elijah was fairly shocked by that one, and I was too. I thought that was pretty good. And of course, when he stabbed Rebecca, I thought them being stabbed by the white oak stake just killed them in general. I didn't think it mattered if they got stabbed in the heart, but fortunately, it does matter. So she isn't dead, but it was just a really, really well done episode. And before he stabs her, when she says, maybe I did want you dead a little bit, he kind of freaked out. He didn't, she did admit it, and he was just taken aback. And he stabbed her in the stomach, and of course he didn't kill her, but he said, maybe, like he said, maybe I wanted you to feel a fraction of what I felt that day. And it was just a really, really good episode. Like, I loved every portion of it was good. Even the side story where Marcel kind of trying to figure out how do I save Rebecca in the end, and he has to deal with Davina basically being tortured. When she was dead the entire time, she was actually you know rejected by the ancestral witches compared to the other girls who were resurrected, who said they basically got along with the witches and they were taught new skills and they're more powerful than ever. In Davina's case, she's rejected and kind of cast off because she was working with Marcel and protecting vampires and stuff from witches. So she's kind of hated by the ancestors, and she's kind of going through like PTSD in a sense, where her death and revival isn't as good as it would be for anyone else who came back to life. She's just in a really bad state where Marcel's trying to use her to save Rebecca. She even called on to Cammy. She was like, I'm sure you're here to help because you want something too. And Cammy wants to help her uncle, and the witches kind of hate her, and I think they still do, even though the one witch said we would welcome Davina back. I still feel like there's something going on there because I just don't trust her, because she was brought back to life and she kind of hated everyone who's quote unquote a good guy in this show. But maybe they would welcome Davina back and realize you know how things may have been mixed up during the harvest and stuff, and who knows, they might accept her, they might not, and they might just kill her off or something, who knows. But I'm really curious to see just how that plays out. And if he said, Marcel did say that he would give Davina back, and I believe he did. We didn't actually see the scene, but I'm sure he did, or he at least told the witches where she is. But there's some elements in there that just didn't work out. Like him, he tried to help Cammy and get her uncle cured, but as the witch said, once the hex is kind of rooted in for that long, there's no stopping it. So it doesn't bode well, for Cammy's uncle, whose name, of course, I can't remember, but we might lose him as a character. And I kind of like him as a character. I think the actor does well. I think the character is actually a good character. He's the sort of interesting human character where Cammy kind of really dives into all the crazy supernatural stuff because she gets, she's been tricked and lied to by Klaus so much, he's kind of the one who's been aware of everything, and he kind of tries to hold the entire city together with these supernatural forces. And I like him as a character because of that, because he is normal just like Cammy, but he has so much more power than her in that aspect where, Cammy kind of helps individual people. He's trying to basically keep the entire city alive at one time by working, being the kind of the leader of the human faction and working with the witches and working with the vampires as well. And that dynamic's really going to change too now that, as the witch told Marcel, he lost, and all the vampires have kind of been cast out. Like, he's been cast out and told not to leave, although he did decide to stay because he wants his city and he wants, his friends to be, where he believes they belong. And that's kind of why he didn't go with Rebecca, because he that's what he really wants. Even though he does want to love her, he doesn't want to kind of be on the run with her and leave his city and his people behind forever. So it was kind of sad to see them, even though they were fighting so much for each other, like even though it was in the past, that's what they wanted, and they took off together in the last episode. And all this stuff, in the end, they still aren't able to be together because Rebecca really had to leave town, and Marcel was really cast out of the house, and he was technically cast out of the city too. But he's gonna fight for what he wants. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out for sure. Because I'm definitely excited to see what he could possibly expect to do, especially now that Elijah and Klaus are a little bit closer. I mean, Klaus mentioned to Elijah, like, you very well done. You're like, I'm impressed because you're starting to sound a bit like me. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But I'm definitely excited for next week's episode, especially with that preview where everything's just kind of in anarchy. The witches are just killing off the vampires, which makes perfect sense because they've been, held back for so long. Now that they've won pretty much in a sense. They all have their power back. They're all much stronger now. They're gonna get their revenge too, even if it's not focused on like Klaus and the originals. It's gonna be on all the random vampires that worked for Marcel and stuff. So they're on a rampage, then the vampires are just killing off humans. It's going to be an interesting episode next week, so I'm really excited to see how that plays out. And I definitely want to see, what's Rebecca going to do? Like, how long is she going to be out of the show? Because I'm sure, like, I'm 100% sure it's not going to be permanent, but I'm curious to see if we get to see, Rebecca in other places, or if she's going to go to, they're going to switch her over to the Vampire Diaries for a little bit and then kind of bring it right back in, because something might happen in that show that makes her run back to her brothers and say, like, we have this problem headed our way now, or something like that. But overall, I love this episode. It was really intense with them trapped in the cemetery. I love the setting of the cemetery because those New Orleans cemeteries, like, everything's almost like mausoleum style, so it's just like giant tombs and stuff like that, and it's not just like a big field of grass with caskets under the ground. Everything's above ground, so it's all stone, and it just looks really nice when they actually film there. And I always enjoy those scenes, but especially in this one because we got to see a lot of it, and it was during the day, and now and they're in like some little cave and you can see outside, but they were just outside the entire time, and aside from when, of course, when Rebecca was hiding. But it was a really good setting. It was very intense. I enjoyed, like I said, the side story of Marcel kind of trying to get back on top, even though he really wasn't. He had no actual weight in the situation outside of giving up Davina. But great episode, and it definitely changed a lot, and I'm excited to see just where things go now that Rebecca's gone and Marcel and his vampires have been cast out by Elijah and Klaus. So comment below, let me know what you guys saw of this episode, favorite parts, least favorite parts, and definitely tell me, where do you guys think this show is going to go now that there's going to be pretty much just anarchy? Like, characters have been cast out, characters have flat out been cast out of the entire city slash state, I would assume. Where do you guys think the series is going to go now that things have gotten to this boiling point? Comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.